Hey there, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Justin. How are you doing?
Good. So our team has pushed us to put together this video, and we are both appreciative and a little terrified. I just want to call out in the beginning, but it's fun to connect on this snowy Pacific Northwest morning and talk a little bit about StrikeGraph and how it came to be. I think we lived it, so we might think the story is a little boring, but actually it is pretty exciting, and we've had in just the last, 20 months, 22 months. Yeah, really amazing journey. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that it's been since 2020. It's that startup dog years. It feels like it's been an eternity ago, but it really hasn't been that long, has it?
No, not at all. And it feels like the time is accelerating a little bit as we grow and it gets more complex, and more of our days get eaten up with managing such an amazing team. So I want to start off with just a question for you. We of course have discussed it, but I think everyone would love to learn a little bit about how did you come to StrikeGraph? What's the background in tech, in startups, in the Pacific Northwest that kind of led you to the types of opportunities that StrikeGraph presented?
Yeah, and I know you'll dive into your background, but I think we have a little bit of a parallel sort of path. I grew up in the software engineering ranks, software developer, kind of architect roles, just really hands-on code. I came out to the Pacific. I want to give you the entire sort of background that would definitely date me if I do that. But I've been out here in the Pacific Northwest almost about 20 years. I came out this way to really sort of scratch the entrepreneurial itch. Obviously, and it still is to this day, just a hotbed of startups and just the cloud, right? Seattle is sort of cloud city. And I came out here to really sort of sharpen those skills, push myself in my career, certainly on the development side. But as you kind of know, when you get into startups, where you start and where you finish, you can really take some interesting paths. And I found myself in smaller and smaller companies, having opportunities to join founding teams, but really changing the trajectory of my career over from just sort of software engineering and development and more into sales roles. Started in sales engineering and get my hands dirty on that side of the fence, and then building out those sales engineering teams and working in products and working in direct sales. So pretty diverse background. And it's really helped me, certainly on the founding side of the fence, being able to have exposure into all different sort of facets of the business and how they operate.
Absolutely. Similarly, in my experience, in my background, I was always fascinated by computers, always really interested in programming and engineering, but also really interested in creating things. And I do think that like the startup environment, being able to build a company and an organization, a solution, and engineer it just was really exciting for me. We're both from the South. I'm from Atlanta, you're from Tennessee. But we both made our way to the Pacific Northwest. I think I was about 15 years behind you, but similarly, I had a colleague that was building a really fun startup in the Seattle, Washington area and was invited to join them as their chief technology officer. And that was really exciting. And you're right, when we work in a startup space, what's great about being a small organization is you have to wear a lot of different hats, and actually you get the opportunity to experience an organization very broadly. Now, you don't necessarily gain the deepest expertise in only one that you might at a huge organization, but I think that vibrant set of contributions is really fun, and it's dynamic like human beings are. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And that's kind of a good, not really a segue so much as kind of when you join a startup. The startup has, and I had really a great mentor of mine, Sunny Gupta, sort of describe any company's life cycle as really like a set of movies and different chapters within the movie. And you kind of have a startup where you've got like that first chapter. It's getting it off the ground. It's the creativity. It's no idea is a bad idea, and then finding something that works. And that customers get delighted about, and then having sort of that initial momentum. The fun thing about a startup is it's so dynamic. It's dynamic in terms of the problem that you're solving. You start to learn a little bit more. You realize, wow, this is a bigger problem than I thought. So it's more product areas, more industries that you can break into is kind of the net result. But even if you stayed along the same exact path of what you're sort of selling and delivering to the customers, the startup mode is so interesting because year one is so different than year two is so different than year three. And whether it's that initial market traction, or maybe it's competitive threats because other people realize, hey, they're doing some great things, so I want to go do it too. Or maybe it's just the scaling aspect. You're going from 10 employees to 100, or X amount of dollars to Y amount of dollars. Those challenges really force you to continuously learn, continuously improve, and never kind of rest on your laurels and think, hey, you know how we did it last year? That's the way we're always going to do it. And that's what keeps me just so connected and just so engaged in startups. Like I can't imagine myself, and no disrespect to people that kind of work at maybe those larger companies or whatever, but that sort of very predictable kind of methodical way, I kind of realized it wasn't for me. And having that ability to have more of a dynamic living entity that you can contribute with along with your colleagues and really kind of see your impact as the movie sort of developed, that's really what keeps me engaged with startups.
So despite us both coming from a similar geography, we actually only met pretty soon before StrikeGraph was launched. And one of the topics that the team wanted us to cover a little bit is how we met. And I might give a little precursor to that about how we arrived at the same building and just a floor apart.
Probably have a little bit of like, it's more of the oral history where we were both, and I'll let you I want you to give I definitely want you to talk a lot about that prior to that first connection. Definitely give a lot on that one. But it's the interesting thing for me is I wasn't really it's not that I wasn't in the startup mode, but I was outside of the venture community for a number of years and solving a couple of different problems, not in the enterprise software space, really I always called it a dusty corner, but a very, very specific industry in financial services and building products and solutions, and bootstrapped and scrappy and all that sort of thing. And while I was in that industry, I kept getting poked and prodded around security and compliance. It was an industry, an area. I was always aware that it was there. It always kind of come up, obviously, in sales or even on the engineering side of the house, putting together architecture documents for my customers, but never in my wildest dreams thought I would ever try to okay, this is a real problem. I want to actually build a solution to make this problem disappear. But I was doing that. And I was doing it in a very, very small, like I said, dusty corner. And it led me to, interestingly enough, kind of come back and talk to the venture community again. I never thought I would be doing that, but lo and behold, I show up at the Madrona Venture Group's, doorstep on just some random day to just reconnect with some colleagues that I had in the past. And I gave them just a brief sort of this is kind of what I'm doing today. It's in this sort of space. And it all started with, you got to meet this guy, if you will.
It certainly leads to the mystery, the drama. So I actually, my experience is deeply in education technology. I spent 15, 20 years trying to build large enterprise education solutions. A lot of the online learning innovation that happened, I built companies or technologies for. And that's how I arrived in Seattle. I was building some education technology, HR management tools for a startup here. And I, as the CTO, when we were trying to sell, our sales leaders were really challenged to get trust to share this data back and forth. And I was trying to support them in that sales motion. What assets can I put in the hand of my sales team that will help them close a deal, get procurement through more quickly? And it happened on every single deal we had. And when we sold that organization and I was looking around for the next venture that I wanted to get engaged with, First off, I kind of had in my head that I was ready to be a CEO again. I think the pain and suffering of the first time had worn off a little bit. I was ready to dive in. And then secondly, this problem just seems so pervasive. And I did want to pick a problem to go after that was a venture capital backed type of problem, like something that they would be very interested in and have the scale that we could go after. Now, most of my experience too is bootstrapped, other than as a CTO or a co-founder. And so I felt like working with an incubator that I had met in the Seattle, Washington area would really give me an opportunity to pressure test whether or not this was a good venture at all. And so I started working with Madrona Venture Labs back in October of 2019. And really, I did a ton of interviews with just potential customers, deep dives into what the different types of standards are and how audits work. And essentially what I was really focused on is this is a revenue issue. It blocks people from bringing revenue in the door. That is the number one problem any organization is trying to solve. And if I can facilitate that trust or acquisition of a trust asset that will help startups sell right alongside big enterprise companies, then that's a really exciting way to democratize security and compliance and use the standards for a benefit. And I think I was struggling to find a co-founder. I had talked to a lot of people that were super smart, but just didn't seem to have the startup ethos that I was really looking for. And then one afternoon, I was at Madrona Venture Labs. This must have been February or late January, I think, in 2020. And Mike Fridgen came by, the leader of Madrona Venture Labs, and says, "Oh, the guys upstairs at Madrona Venture Group, just one floor up, they have a colleague, Brian, that they'd really like you to meet that's interested in what you're doing." And we got to sit down for 30 minutes, and it was magical, Brian. I was like, this is the guy. He really gets that this is a huge problem. He knows how to build a company, and he's not terrified of my Southern accent, and that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, I actually instilled trust out of the gate.
Yeah. And we really know that just that 30-minute conversation, I think I had a really crappy open source project that we had pieced together to try and give you a vision of what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't enamored with that piece of it, but as a former product guy, I could see through it. And there was a couple of things that got me. You sort of hooked me on the accent. I'm like, okay, now I can try, kindred spirit here. But, the interesting thing and what really connected it was I had the same sort of feeling and sort of like background. I'm in music. So it felt to me, it's like when you get like somebody that you bond with on the, I play bass, somebody, a drummer comes in, and sometimes you have that magical connection where you're like, yeah, this feels really good. I had that too in that 30 minutes. But what specifically got me is a lot of times in security, in my own sort of investigation in the space, it's a big space. It's security and compliance. It spans everything. But I gravitated towards really two things. This is a revenue problem. And two, it's not a technical solution. It's really a business problem. And within the first 5 minutes, like those were the first two things that you were like, this is a revenue issue. This is not just a technical problem we have here. I'm like, wow, this guy gets it. Like we absolutely have the same philosophy around this. And then I was just kind of struck by your vision of where, how the company could be shaped, where the company could go. Again, hallmarks of a great CEO is be able to just articulate the vision. And I was like, I want to be, this is the partner, right? This is the partner for me. And I think we could do some great things together.
We really did a wonderful job. Apologies.
And just, we had notes, by the way, folks. This is breaking the fourth wall here. It clearly says, put your stuff on mute. On mute, absolutely. You can edit this out, post it.
Yes, we can. Although we might not, it's great color. Yes. We sat down for that 30 minutes, and that was the last in-person meeting you and I got for almost 8 months, I think.
Yeah.
Until we raised our seed round and had to get together for a photo because of COVID. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was so strange. It was the world completely changed. I remember going up to Madrona and meeting you, and they had a makeshift table with I think it was a visitor log, maybe, but I don't even think that was there for COVID. I just think it was, there's no more receptionist in the front. And there was just like a small, just sort of bottle of hand sanitizer. And then within 2 weeks, it was, as we're sort of talking and you're pitching and all this, and we're just trying to figure out, hey, listen, next time we can get together, the schedules kind of work out. The world just poof, like instantly changed, right? So it was strange looking back on it now. Like, wow, we really haven't spent a lot of sort of face-to-face time, but that was just sort of how the world. There's a lot of folks in that sort of startup mode that have probably similar stories to share.
I mean, a lot of change all at once. Not only were we trying to build a new company together, bring new teammates on board, but the whole fabric of what working together felt like changed immensely. Although one thing that rang very true, I think, for the two of us as founders is that we represent the buyer in a really broad way. Like the types of customers that have these problems are either chief technology officers, like I had been, that needed to manage a technology operation, or great sales leaders that are trying to get that trust. And that, I think that's one thing that both seeded our ethos, helped us focus on the right way to solve these problems and see it with clarity, and also speak the language, not necessarily of auditors or people that are privacy experts, but those that are trying to operate the companies that need these types of solutions. And we've grown quite a bit since that initial founding. I think as we wrapped up 2022, hundreds of customers, lots of just exciting new features around AI and multiple standards, and just a really vibrant execution. I think the statistic I love the best about our progress, as I was looking back over the last 22 some odd months, is that we haven't had a single customer fail a single control in any audit across all of our customers. And there's nothing more powerful to me than that, to say that working with StrikeGraph not only got them through the audit, but a successful security posture that they're capable of operating well. Yeah.
That's an amazing statistic, actually, when you think about it, because, at the end of the day, what we do for our customers is we help them achieve a trust asset.
Right.
And what we call a trust asset is something like a SOC 2 report. It's, it's getting audited against the ISO standard, any of these frameworks that are out there. And one of the theories that we had getting started, and you were the driver of this one, is, the problem is really scoping, that initial set of controls. If you get it right, you're in great shape, and it sets you up for success as you grow and scale the business, not just to achieve a trust asset, but really in the business and the operation side of the house. And it was interesting because I remember my own personal experience going, oh yeah, that's right. I never thought about it. Like, there's a right way of doing things, and trust me, I took the wrong way of doing things, because without any kind of expertise or something like StrikeGraph to guide you through that process, or have a great team like our concierge services team to really just help you, you kind of just throw stuff against the wall. And what you end up with is a bit of, I always like to say, it's compliance technical debt, or almost like, like developers have technical debt, you have compliance debt.
Yeah.
But that statistic really speaks to the fact that when you use something like StrikeGraph, you have a successful outcome, but our team really helps you avoid any pitfalls, any landmines, and just is so surgical in with what does this customer not just trying to accomplish, but let's learn about their business. What's the right size? What's the right fit? And then let's have a conversation over what controls that company at that stage in that space should be implementing. And it's something you just don't see in this industry. You see sort of like a checklist, a one size fits all. Everybody's like got the same sort of posture, blah, blah, blah. That's not how the world works. Every startup is a bit unique. Every organization does things a little bit different. And I think we account for that.
Absolutely. I think that's my CTO perspective, right? That how do I both successfully deliver product that needs to be delivered and kind of adhere to security guidelines that matter. If I'm just doing security because someone told me that it was a good idea, or an expert in the field interpreted at a standard in a way that makes them think that this particular control practice is required, I'm actually missing the opportunity to focus on the security practices that matter, and vice versa, reduce the amount of pain and suffering by eliminating some security practices that don't matter. And I made the horrible mistake too. At a prior organization, I thought my job to get through this or to get those trust assets was simply to write a lot of policies. And a lot of people do that. And I got a checklist of policies and I fit them all out. And I shared them with my team. And I was like, how do we feel about this? And everyone's like, I'm not reading 60 pages worth of paperwork, Justin, to understand how to do DevOps, And so I think that that approach of StrikeGraph as a solution, and our premise from day one is that, hey, your security posture needs to fit you. And there are actually easy, non-consultative ways using technology to pull that together. And that's really what we focused on as kind of a cornerstone to our solution. So look, we sit here in January on the precipice of a really exciting 2022 for us. Any things that you're really excited for the upcoming year, Brian, in the continued growth of StrikeGraph?
That's a long one. There's a never-ending list. What I'm really excited about is we are at that phase where, and it's a fun part of this sort of chapter of the journey. It's really about scaling. It's about doing what we do, and we know we do it extremely well. But now let's sort of quote unquote take it to the masses. And part of what I personally am excited about is we've got incredible folks across all parts of the team. And I think they're all in a position, and they have an opportunity now to really shine. This is part of the journey where it's not, you're hearing the founder's story, but it's not the founders anymore. It's StrikeGraph. It's the team. And being able to have really, them sort of carry the baton, the team carry the load, not just sort of us doing a few things and whatnot. That's the exciting piece of it, is to see the talent that we have and everything that we did last year. Now let's sort of bring it and just do it at scale and really make sure that from a market perspective, StrikeGraph is just a very, we're really trying to, our goal is to become the next great enterprise software company in the Pacific Northwest. That's our sort of medium-term goal. Once we get there, then let's be with the next great enterprise software company in the US or North America. But I think we just have this great opportunity in front of us to be that next super successful company that comes out of the greater Seattle area and kind of adds to that long lineage of just incredible companies that have really started out of this area.
Yeah, I agree. We have a brilliant team. I think that you and I have built that initial culture, that initial way of working together that's both enjoyable and challenging, and a learning and growth opportunity. And we've done our best to share that with every other of our employees. We're employees as well at StrikeGraph, our board, our investors. That team-centric approach to what we do is just a recognition that we are an organization, and no one leader is going to solve the day or magic wand away the problems of building a company. But together, especially as you and I kind of extract, and I find myself more and more being like, okay, Justin, let the team handle that, a little bit, as opposed to getting too engaged and being a great cheerleader and giving them the resources they need to really go and win. We have a ton of stories at StrikeGraph of people that have started with us and just in the last year and a half grown immensely in their career. in ways you and I never could have imagined, because we were willing to give them the creative freedom and responsibility to grow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does talk to the culture. Every company talks about it. I certainly have been involved in companies where they've had hires and roles that specifically focus in on culture. And I was extremely worried about how does culture kind of work in this like 100% remote, and even being on the sales side where a lot of my teams were certainly geographically spread out. Yeah. I was worried because I knew that collaboration can just sort of slide. It never once has been forced at StrikeGraph. It just sort of organically, it kind of, people come in and they realize, wow, there's a lot of, like, I have no shortage of connections within my the team, that's my role, but cross-functionally, you're always kind of exposed to different aspects of the business because everybody is collaborating. Everybody's willing to pitch in. Everybody's learning from each other. So you could be in inside sales, and you might find yourself working with marketing, on an initiative. You might find yourself partnering up with customer success and and it's just that cross-pollination is pretty incredible. And what that actually leads to is somebody coming on today with, and this is the thing that I just, again, love about a startup, is the role that you start and where you end up within a startup. It's really up to the person and their interests. Obviously the culture and, the company has to put those opportunities out there, but it's really just baked into our DNA. You can come on in one function, show some skill, show some interest in another area, you'll get exposed to it, and before you know it, you're over there, and that's where your career is taking you. And I love those stories because it just shows that how a great culture can support the individual's professional career goals.
Yeah.
And that to me is just that's what makes a great team. And honestly, those are the things that we're going to have a credible and successful run here at StrikeGraph. But when I'm old and grayer and in a rocking chair, that's the types of things that I will probably look back a lot more fondly than any metrics we hit or any kind of number goals that we achieve. It'll be about, oh, I remember when this person started, and look at them now. They're CEO of some company now, right? And that's what I want to see happen down the line with folks that come on with StrikeGraph.
Well, it's going to be a fun day when you and I can sit back in some rocking chairs on a patio somewhere warm and reflect on all the excitement. This year is going to be, I think, certainly exciting for our employees. We have a lot of really innovative ways our platform is going to grow throughout the year. Major investments we've made in technology and infrastructure that really allow us to not only scale the reach of our solution, but the impact our solution has for any one particular customer. And that's just going to be exciting. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today, Brian, to sit down and talk with me. I know that people on our team will be really glad to share this out and probably embarrass us a little bit here and there.
Probably, that's okay.
Not our full-time job. We're just throwing the hat on for this particular part of the support, and can't wait to get together in person again at one of our management offsites. So thanks, Brian.
Absolutely. Thank you, Justin. Go Team StrikeGraph.
Go Team StrikeGraph.